Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of all things books, booktube, bookishness, anything else I want to talk about. You know, it occurred to me I never introduced myself in these videos, and I've been on BookTube for a while, so if you don't know, my name's Brian. This is my BookTube channel. Welcome. I'm going to talk about four main things today. My weekly reading, my TBR, or it's actually a wrap-up for February, TBR for March. I want to talk about the BookTok controversy, and I want to talk about the new Tennessee drag ban law that went into effect. I will leave timestamps down below so that you can skip back and forth or avoid the parts you don't want to view, and you know, that's fine with me. But let's get started with my wrap-up for February. So, in February, I read 10 books. I don't know what's happened to me, but I've gone from being like a 5-book-a-month reader to a 10-book-a-month reader. I know in part this is because I'm listening to more audiobooks, and that certainly is something you can fit in more easily in your day. And you can, you know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I drive or while I'm walking, so I understand that that's a part of it. But even then, you know, 8 books is kind of a lot for me. So I thought I'd just run through the books really quickly. I think I've talked about every one of these books except one of these books so far in video, so I won't spend a lot of time on these. I made a whole video, which I posted on Monday, about what I consider to be the importance of reading slave narratives. And I've actually been listening to slave narratives on audiobooks from LibriVox. All the ones I've mentioned are available for free, and I think it's a great resource. And since they are literally narratives, I think they work really well as audiobooks. But I did finish 2 this month. I started a third, a slave narrative from an enslaved woman named Mary Prince. But I finished 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup, which I've talked about extensively. I finished The Life and Adventures of Henry Bibb, another slave narrative, which I also mentioned in the video before. So those are the 2 slave narratives I listened to as audiobooks. I started off the month by reading The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is a book that, you know, actually came out when I was in college, I think, and the movie came out shortly after that. And for whatever reason, I just avoided it. I'm not exactly sure why I did, and I'm sorry that I did, because I read The Color Purple at the beginning of this month, and I thought it was just great. An epistolatory novel, which I think reveals a tremendous amount about the problems faced by black women in the United States of America in the past and the present, and how they look for family, comfort, structure in any place they can, and how they form those communities. I thought it was just really, really good, and far more involved and deeper than on the surface level I think it seems like. So if you read a synopsis of it, you may think, oh, well, you know, I think I know the story, and I really don't think you do, and definitely is worth a read if you've never read it. I also read Never Caught, The Washington's Endless Pursuit of the Runaway Slave Owned a Judge by Armstrong Dunbar, which I really thought was great, really, really interesting. Lots of great insight into the way slavery worked in the late 18th century United States of America, and the desire for freedom by all people, really, regardless of the circumstances in which they're held. That desire for freedom and to be free and to have and to be able to live a life in which you are more sure of being able to shape your own destiny and create your own future. I thought it was really good, a really good work of history, and I enjoyed it a tremendous amount. Let's see, I also read, Telephone, my second Percival Everett novel. Telephone is a story basically about grief and how grief drives us to, or how different people respond to grief, how our own grief can make us blind to the problems of others, how, you know, we work out our grief, and just a really, I thought, powerful, moving exploration of that subject done in a pretty incredible way. So I would highly recommend that book as well. The book I haven't given a full discussion of so far is How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. This is, the subtitle of that is Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America. And Clint Smith is a a journalist who works for the Atlantic magazine primarily. And what he did is, and the kind of structural element of this book is that Smith toured places that are significant or give significant insights into slavery and its history in the United States. He travels from Monticello to the Angola prison in Louisiana, to Senegal, to a Confederate graveyard outside of Richmond, and he interviews and talks to people, and he provides, I think, some really great insights into the struggle we still have with coming to terms with the history of slavery in the United States, how some are in denial, some feel like it's something we should have moved on beyond, how oftentimes, even today, black people who were enslaved their story really isn't even attempted to be told by some groups and some organizations. I thought it was very, very, very good. You know, I don't know that I think I've read books on similar subjects that are better, but oftentimes those are books I think that focus more narrowly on one subject in one place, and you get more detail. So I guess what I'm saying is I think I've read books that I learned more from, but because they were academic. As a popular work of history, I thought it was really great and really well done. Oh, I read The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by BookTube's own Katie Lumsden, which I was fortunate enough to get an advanced copy of, and I read and reviewed it. I'll leave a link to the review at the end on an end screen this video, and I just thought it was a tremendous amount of fun, particularly for bookish people who have read a little bit at least from the Victorian era. I thought it was fun, and I really thought, you know, as somebody who's followed Katie's channel for a long period of time, I just thought it just felt like the book that Katie would write, and I hope that she writes more in a similar way, and I'm sure she has plans to, and I hope she has great success with that book. I also read yes, I got through 3 of my BookTube prize books in February. This was the thing that was weighing on my mind, the thing that was causing the most reading frustration, and I did manage to finish 3 books in February, and on top of that, I read 3 of the longest. I read the 3 longest books in my BookTube prize group. I have a nonfiction group. I can't remember which letter it is, but I don't have one that has a 1,000-page book. I think my longest book was a little over 600 pages. I think it was 600, 400, 370. There's another 350-page book, and then there are 2 relatively short ones. So in that respect, I've been lucky. I did read those 3 books. I have to say that they were all kind of frustrating in their own way. If I were to rank them as they are right now, I would say right now I'm hoping that at least 1 or 2 of the 3 books I still have to read replace 1 or 2 of these books. I do have them, you know, as I go along, I kind of rank the books in my head, and I do actually have that ranking ongoing, so I have them in order. I will say that one of the books which was the most frustrating to read, the most challenging to read of the 3, is the one that's kind of grown in my estimation the most. And it's one of those books where I don't know if the author did what I experienced on purpose, or if this is me trying to force order on something which is chaotic. But I look forward to being able to talk about that book regardless of where I rank it when we do finally get to the end of the first round, the octafinal round of the BookTube prize. So there you go. There's my wrap up for February with what I can tell you about that. And so I'm going to go on to my TBR, my pile of possibilities for March. So in my TBR pile of possibilities for March, there are the 3 BookTube prize books that I still have to read. Now, I'm going on a long trip right around the beginning of this month, and so I've loaded the 3 BookTube prize books onto my Kindle and hopefully be able to read them on the plane. Since there are 3 of them, if one of them gets boring, I can always go to another one, and so I'm hoping that's the only book I take with me on my trip, and I hope nothing goes wrong and I'm able to charge it when I need to, etc. So that's definitely a part of what I have to read. That's the obligation I've made. But in addition to that, I want to read as a part of 2 of the March read-alongs. I think it may be that is March the one that has the most read-alongs going on? March the Mammoths. Anyway, so there are 2 read-alongs I want to participate in. One is Her-storyathon, which is hosted by Charlotte at Coiny Reads and I believe Brittany at Literarily Smitten. I'll leave links to their channels, or I'll tag their channels down below so that you can go find them. They are the host of the Her-storyathon, which is essentially a month in which we read history of women. March is Women's History Month, so I want to participate in that. They have a whole bingo card, and it's a whole system. So if that's your thing, please go participate in that and check out their resources. That's not something I've ever been able to do. The bingo card thing has never worked for me, and so I'm just going to read books of history about women written by women. And I've already started the first one. Since you're seeing this on, what is this? This would be March the 4th or 5th? I can't remember. The first one I've started is the monumental work of history, The Hemmingses of Monticello, An American Family by Annette Gordon Reed. This is just a big book. It is more than 600 pages, and the print is small, and it's possible this is the only one of the books I'll be able to read for Her-storyathon. But this is already great. I'm only on page 50, and the scholarship here and the writing is just brilliant. If you haven't read this, as I haven't, maybe thinking about picking it up. It tells the story of Sally Hemings, who was the enslaved woman on whom Jefferson fathered several children, her family, her parents' family. It's an examination of the development of slavery in colonial Virginia and how that carried over into U.S. history. And like I said, you can already see I've tabbed pages, and I'm only on like page 50. So it's an absorbing read. I'm really looking for that, and that's the one I'm dedicated to finishing. I also, a while back, bought a copy of Vera, Mrs. Vladimir Nabokov by Stacy Schiff. This is basically the story of author Vladimir Nabokov's wife, and I have no idea why she's significant, even though I'm sure she is. I love Stacy Schiff's book Cleopatra, so I'm looking forward to reading this, and I'm hoping to get to that. And then last year I said I was going to read Everybody Was So Young by Amanda Vale. This is Gerald and Sarah Murphy, a Lost Generation love story, and since it is partly about Sarah Murphy, I'm going to count that, and it is by a woman historian, Amanda Vale. This is a book I've long wanted to read. It's about the time period I really love and the expatriate American community living in Europe in the 1920s and 30s. The Murphys knew everybody. They knew Hemingway, they knew Fitzgerald, they knew Dos Passos, they knew, well, everybody. It's possible that Zelda and Scott's marriage foundered because of visiting the Murphys. Anyway, I really want to read that. So those are my three choices for Her-storyathon and Women's History Month. And then this is also March Mystery Madness. If you don't know, probably if you don't, because I don't mention it often enough, I really enjoy reading mysteries, and so I'm going to fit some mysteries in this month. I've already finished one. That's the Saint Fiacre Affair by Georges Simenon. Love Simenon, love Maigret. This is, one of the, 100 or so of these novels there are. This was incredibly satisfying, even though Maigret himself doesn't actually solve the crime. He just kind of witnesses the crime being solved. I thought that was great. I bought another one of those when I was at the Houston bookstore devoted to mystery novels, Murder by the Book, and so I bought Maigret and the Ghost, which I might also get to this month. I would really love to get to the second Dublin Murder Squad novel, which I believe is The Likeness by Tana French, so I have that. I also recently acquired this really cool hardback copy of The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. This would be my third or fourth Agatha Christie novel. I believe this is the first Poirot novel, so that's a possibility. And then I always love to read Elmore Leonard, even though, again, somewhat new to me. And I'm not sure this qualifies as a mystery. To me, the line between mystery and thriller seems to be somewhat vague. But this is City Primeval by Elmore Leonard, and so that's also a possibility. So that and my three BookTube prize books, those are the books that I plan to read in March, or I hope to get to read in March. Oh, I forgot to mention March Mystery Madness, I believe, is hosted at least by Jenn at Remembered Read, so I'll leave a link to, or I'll tag her down below as well. So one of the things that have been going around BookTube the last week or two, which I will admit I've kind of waited, I think, to be the last person to say anything about, is the whole controversy surrounding BookTok and, I believe an article written in GQ, essentially in which the author of that article is a former booktuber who is essentially, from what I can gather, looking down his nose judgmentally at the young people who are on BookTok and essentially, accusing them of not really reading the books, about it being more about lifestyle than about reading. And essentially what the story is gatekeeping. It's gatekeeping on the book community and essentially establishing the idea, or trying to establish the idea that these people aren't real readers and these people are. And because it involves BookTok and TikTok is more of a young person thing than an older person thing, it necessarily has a generational overtone to it. And when I read the article, I couldn't help but think this is just an old man, even though I'm sure he's only in his 30s, who's looking and shaking his head and saying, "Kids these days." There's a lot made about, arranging books by color or aesthetically, or paying more attention to the way things look than the actual content of the book. This is, spilled over then into attacks on booktubers who do the same things. And let me just say right now, it's none of your business. It's not any of your business. If you think a book talker is not really reading the book and they're a fraud, don't watch their book talk videos. If you think a booktuber is a fraud and isn't really reading the books, don't watch their booktube videos. You don't have to make a video attacking someone because you think they're a fraud. You could just not pay attention, because the problem is, particularly with people my generation and younger, when we begin attacking young people for the things that young people like, we sound like every other generation of old people who've attacked young people for the things young people like, and you just end up coming off bad. There's no way around it. Okay, you're going to end up looking bitter, old, out of it, judgmental, gatekeepery. So, my advice to everybody about the whole book talk thing and the whole fake reader thing is just mind your own business. Make your videos, watch what you like, read what you like. Let people do that. In all honesty, even if every book talker is a fraud and they read none of those books, if they encourage young people to read more, even if they just encourage young people to read more to feel like they're a part of a group called readers, there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that. It's probably a good thing. Young people love that sense of community, and if it makes them read, great. So the last thing I want to talk about has to do with the new Tennessee drag law. Now, I watched a video from Trey Crowder. I don't know if you're aware of his channel. He calls himself the Liberal Redneck, and he has a video about the Tennessee drag ban, and I really just want to second what he said there. If you don't know, Tennessee's essentially passed a law against drag shows where the wording of the law is so vague, and I don't think this is on accident. The wording of the law is so vague that it almost prohibits, or it might be, or it probably does, and it probably intended to prohibit anyone from appearing in public in drag, to eliminate drag altogether. And the idea is that drag shows are bad for kids. There's this whole tempest in a teacup issue, which is surfaced around really just a few videos of kids being at drag shows where the drag performers may or may not be performing in a provocative way, and they may or may not be dressed in a provocative way. From those videos, we have to come to the conclusion that any interaction between kids and anyone who may be dressed in drag is a negative, that it is a form of, I hate this word, grooming kids to grow up to be, the sexual prey of the people doing this. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I'll say the same thing here that I said about Book Talk. If you don't want your kid to go to a drag show, don't take him to the damn drag show. But you don't get to tell me what I think is harmful to my kid when you have no proof that drag shows lead to any kind of increased sexual assault against children, because guess what? There is no such proof. Now, if you compare the number of kids who've been sexually assaulted by drag queens, or, and I'll get to this in a minute, by trans people, if you compare that to the number of kids who've been sexually assaulted by pastors, preachers, and priests, you'll find that church is actually, by that definition, far more dangerous place to take your kid than to a drag show. That's the unfortunate truth. Okay, but we've kind of focused on what's happened is that right-wing politicians have focused on drag shows as a way of rallying their base through hatred and fear of something these people don't understand. And while it seems like it's anti-drag, it's really anti-gay and anti-trans. Because these people really have no problem with men wearing women, dressing as women. As you know, Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani did a whole bit where Giuliani's in drag. And, Trump actually kind of sexually assaulted Giuliani while he's wearing drag. That's not what these people are after. This is the point that Trey makes in his video. That's not what bothers these people. These people don't mind a man wearing women's clothing as long as they know the man is straight. The only thing they want to eliminate is gay men wearing women's clothing or trans people. That's what they want to eliminate, and that is hatred. They want to limit the life, they want to limit the rights of people who just want to live their lives they want to wear the clothing they want to live the life they want to identify as the person they feel that they are. That's what they're after. And this is a form of fascism, outlawing the behaviors of certain groups of people on the assumption that those people are dangerous, and rallying hatred against that group of people is fascism. The idea that the trans community is using drag shows to groom kids into being sexual victims of trans people is just pure fiction, and it's evil. And it's evil for intentional political purposes. You don't have to like drag shows. You don't have to, be comfortable with the idea of trans human beings. Nobody can force you to do that. But your discomfort doesn't give you the right to limit the rights and freedoms of other people. And it certainly doesn't justify your hatred and your support for politicians who focus hatred on those people. We are talking about a minuscule minority of the American population, of the world population. Probably well under 1%. That 1% of people do not pose a threat to everyone else. They do not. And the idea that this drag show thing is just kind of like a quasi-effort to attack trans people, or is a quasi-effort to attack trans people, is just pure evil. It's just wrong. And I know what a lot of people are going to come back in the comments to say. Well, these trans women should not be in women's bathrooms or in women's sports. Fine. But here's the thing. You can certainly believe that. But here's the thing. You don't get to deny the existence of a whole group of people. You don't get to deny the existence, the reality of trans people because of bathrooms and because of sports. Those issues can be worked out, but they cannot be worked out as long as one side denies the existence of the people on the other. That is just pure evil, it's pure hatred, and it's fascism. Anyway, there you go. There is my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.